Well, hi church. Hope you're doing well in this season that we find ourselves in life. I just want to kind of give you today really a thought for the day, just a couple of reflections that I pray would be an anchor for your soul in this time. I find in seasons like this where our emotions are everywhere, I always find that having some thinking, some principles, some language to frame our situation and circumstances helps to steady our emotions, to still our emotions. I think this is what the psalmist keeps getting at when he encourages us to almost preach at our own souls, to communicate to our own souls, to speak to our own souls, to say to our souls to be still, to put your hope in God, to think about God as our anchor, as our salvation. And so really that's what I want to do today, is I just want us to think about one or two things that I hope will just help you today and help you this week. I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and when Joni and I have the incredible privilege of leading this wonderful community called the Whole Vineyard Church from January, there's no way that we predicted that we would find ourselves in this situation. And I was actually reflecting on God's goodness to us, because my very first sermon as a senior pastor in January, I had a mini sermon series all planned. I was really excited. It was the year 2020, which is an important year. It sounded like an important year. It was the beginning of a new decade. And so I wanted to talk about vision, and I wanted to talk about how this year could be the best year yet, and so many different things, and so many things that I'd read, social media, through other churches, that seemed to be the message. And it's about a week before I had to speak, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was speaking to me about a particular passage in the book of James. And let me read these verses to you. It says this in James 4 verse 13. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or to that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money, while you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast and brag, and all such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the good that they ought to do and doesn't do it sins. And I just could not escape these verses and these words in the book of James. And I thought to myself, this will probably be the worst New Year's message I could possibly do, especially in my first week as senior pastor. I thought that is probably not the most faith-building of words that I want to communicate to you as a church. But as I sit here now in our current circumstances and situation, I can't think of a more relevant set of verses for us and for the church at this time. These verses are basically communicating a real simple premise, and it's this: life is brief. Life is uncertain. Therefore, focus on things which are urgent and important. Of course, the context here is in the whole subject of wisdom. It's about living a wise life. The context here, going a bit further, are to merchants, to businessmen and women. But we can apply these verses to our lives today and right now. I don't think in my entire life I could say with more clarity that we are living in uncertain times, and right now our lives feel brief. There's a fragility about life right now, and when we know that and feel that. And the truth is that that was always the truth before we found ourselves in this season of life. In God's perspective, our lives are brief and our lives are uncertain. But I think in our world, we struggle to live and lead from that particular perspective. But right now, I think we all feel, as we look around at our world and we see what's going on, is that our life is brief and our life is uncertain. Now, what it tells us to do in that season is the implication of that is to focus on urgent and important things. And so in this season, what I want to encourage us all to do is to focus very much on the urgent and important things. And things which we deem to be urgent and important, the reality is aren't urgent and important anymore. There are many things, many hopes, if you like, many areas of life that we placed our trust in, that we dropped our anchor into that circumstance or into that relationship, or into that hope or into that dream. And right now in this time of shaking, that's what it feels like in this time of shaking, is that all those things that we placed our confidence in, our hope in, our trust in, many of all those plans and those dreams for today or tomorrow, as it talks about in the book of James, the things that we had planned as a church, the things that we had planned as families and as individuals for next week and for this year and for next year, a lot of them are just falling to the wayside, just collapsing before our very eyes. And so with that, I think that helps us to refocus and to redirect our hope into things which are urgent and important. And so as a church, that's where I really feel that we should be thinking about and meditating upon in our days. I think what this passage tells us is that because we don't know what will happen tomorrow, is that we should really take on the wisdom that Jesus tells us in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 6, where he says these incredible words: do not worry. Do not worry. And Jesus unpacks this and he talks about not bringing tomorrow's worries into today. And he talks about seeking first the kingdom of God, and all these things that we're often worried about will be added unto you. The basic needs of life, God will look after us. And so what Jesus is trying to get us to do really pairs up nicely and marries really well with this passage, is that what Jesus is trying us to do is in seeking first the kingdom, is to focus on that which is urgent and important. And the enemy to that is to worry about tomorrow and bring tomorrow's worries into today. The reality is, in our circumstances right now, we don't know what will happen tomorrow. Every single day there's new information, there's updates, there's new things that we've got to abide by and to do, and so it's an evolving situation. So what we can do is focus on today, and I think there's real wisdom in that. I don't mean let's cram everything into today and forget what will happen in a year's time. I actually think the wisdom from God is to do things today and to think about things today that will affect and help you tomorrow and indeed in a year's time. Jim Bakker was kind of one of the first US televangelists, and it's quite ironic at this time that many of us who have no experience about going online or using this kind of technology are now becoming televangelists by their thousands, pastors all around the world right now becoming televangelists. But Jim Bakker had this phrase, and he would always say to mow your own lawn. He'd say, mow your own lawn, take care of your own lawn, don't get someone else to do it, you just do that. And the context of him speaking into that is that, of course, Jim Baker sadly had a moral failure and spent time in prison. And whilst he was in prison, God spoke to him a lot, and he was redeemed out of that situation, and God is using him again today around the world. But what he was getting at is that when we're focusing on so many different things, actually one of the most important things that we can do is focus on the basic things of life today. Is that it's easy as we say we're going to do this and that, and we have all these incredible plans, to actually forget to just do the simple thing of mowing our own lawn. And actually we're in a season, and we're in a time as a church where the greatest gift for us is simplicity. John Piper, in the context of talking about generosity and giving, says that we should be living with wartime simplicity. And so where things have been stripped away, where all those things that we have placed our hope in seem to be shaken, what we can control and what we can do, which brings a real sense of stability and steadfastness in our days and in our moments, is to focus on doing simple things that are important, that we can control day by day. So let me ask you this: what are you and what can you do today that we can redeem in this moment, that now becomes urgent and important? 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, it didn't seem that important. It was part of life that we did in order to make room for what we considered to be urgent and important. But actually, those things were never that urgent or important. But actually, the basic things of life are now urgent and important. So today, it may look like this. It may look like, with the restraints that we have, to take a simple walk for half an hour around your neighbourhood and just to be with God and to pray for your neighbours. That is something that maybe we thought we couldn't do or had time to do previously, but now we have time to do it. Many of you are living with chaos at home. Maybe that's with homeschooling the kids, with work, and just living in the tension of that. It's a new circumstance for many of us, and it's challenging. It's really challenging. But in the midst of the chaos and midst of the panic, I want you to lay hold of things that you can control. Things that we can see God in the everyday simple things of life. Go for a walk and pray. Spring is coming. You can sense it. You can hear the birds singing. The blossom is starting to come on the trees. Now's the time to mow the lawn. Do a bit of gardening. Many of us have complained that we don't have time to do an hour's Bible study. Now is the time to open our Bibles and just to read. We have time to spend time with our loved ones. And for some of you who are living on your own, that may be really, really difficult. But to use the internet, to use modern means to connect and to reach out with family and have conversation with them that maybe you didn't before. Maybe you've got a relationship that is strained with a family member or a loved one. Now is a time to actually reach out to them and say, look, actually those things weren't that important, were they? But right now, family's important. So can I reach out to you? Tonight I'll be going to the church, and I'll be packing some food bags ready for distribution to many people in our community who are in need. Before, that felt good. It was a good thing to do, packing one of our carrier bags with food. But today it just feels weightier. It feels much more urgent. It feels more important. I will never look at something as simple as that in the same way again. God is redeeming our everyday moments, and he's redeeming the simple things of life once again. And he's showing us how important these basic things of life are. What about cooking a meal? What about sitting around the dinner table with your family, with your loved ones? If you're on your own, maybe doing that online There are many people I've heard who are having meals virtually with people. Do that. Have a dinner together with people through a Zoom call or through Facebook. Just connect with people, talk to people, have conversation. Use our time to do things like pray, to just be still. I'm struggling with that, honestly, at the moment, because I seem to live my life at a pace where it is surrounded around busyness and people and their needs. And what this moment is helping me to do is just to be still. And in those first few minutes, it feels overwhelming. It feels difficult. But what a wonderful opportunity to put into practice the many things that we've talked about in our church. Spiritual disciplines. Allowing God in the stillness of our moments to speak to us and for us to speak to Him, to have conversation with Him, to have some time of silence and solitude, to have some time of peace in the chaos. Now, over the next days and weeks, we're going to be producing some videos to help you in this time. Not just survive, but really thrive, to help you plan, to think about your finances, to think about exercise, to think about your emotional, psychological health in this time, to go through some really key passages of the Bible and see what God is saying to us in this time. Whatever you do today, remember to give this day to God, to live in each moment, to invite Jesus Christ into every area of your life, to welcome Him into your life. We're praying for you. We're here for you. If you need anything, feel free just to reach out and connect with us. God bless you.